The Week 15 AP poll dropped yesterday, and we now have a new number 1 team in college basketball. And with all of the other results around the country, there has been a lot of movement in the AP Top 25. So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down every team in the AP Top 25 poll, starting at number 25 and working our way to the number 1 spot. But before we get into the rankings, if you enjoy the content, please consider dropping a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. And now, let's jump into it. And as always, to start off, I want to quickly go over some of the teams that are receiving votes but just missed out on the rankings. And first up, we have Clemson, who dropped out of the AP Top 25 this week after back-to-back double-digit losses to both Virginia Tech and Duke last week. Then you have Utah State next, who's on a 7-game win streak right now and trying to work their way back into the top 25. Tennessee also had a bounce-back week last week after their loss to Kentucky a few weeks ago that knocked them out. Kentucky dropped out of the top 25 after their loss to Florida over the weekend. And then another team I want to mention is Miami, who is receiving votes after their wins over North Carolina and NC State last week and is looking to be trending in the right direction. But kicking off the top 25 at number 25, we have Alabama, and the Crimson Tide are riding a 4-game win streak after road wins at Ole Miss and over South Carolina this past week. And having one of the nation's tougher strength of schedules and the wins they have gotten because of it, including Illinois and St. John's, are why I actually have them higher in my rankings at number 22. But with the current momentum that they have built up, they should climb quickly up the top 25 rankings and could be even higher come next week. Next, at number 24, we have Wisconsin, who was previously unranked, but Wisconsin is now 18-7 with statement wins at Michigan, Illinois, and over Michigan State. And John Blackwell and Nick Boyd headline a dangerous duo for the Badgers right now and look like one of the best backcourts in the country. And I matched the AP poll here as having the Badgers at number 24 in my rankings as well. And if they can sustain the momentum of what they've been doing recently, they'll surge in not only the Big Ten race, but also be one of the dangerous matchups for anyone in March. And down one spot to number 23 is BYU, and now the Cougars sit at 19-6, and this past week they grinded out 2 wins over Baylor and an overtime one over Colorado at home. And the big three of AJ DeMansa, Robert Wright, and Richie Saunders has really carried the Cougars so far this season, but losing Saunders for the rest of the year raises some real concerns for this team. I also had them at number 23 in my rankings, but with their upcoming matchups and the loss of Saunders, I'm not sure how long they're going to stay ranked in the AP Top 25. Coming in at number 22 is Miami, Ohio, and the RedHawks are now 25-0 and up to the number 22 spot in the AP Top 25 and are currently the nation's only unbeaten team that's remaining. And they have been dominating the MAC and have separated themselves from the field entirely. And although I'm lower at number 25 with them in my rankings due to that strength of schedule, the fact that they are still perfect this far into the season is incredibly impressive. And if they stay undefeated, the rankings may even continue going up, not only for the AP Top 25, but also for myself. Louisville jumped up a few spots to number 21 after their explosive wins this past week over both NC State and Baylor, which extended their winning streak to 5 currently. And Michael Brown Jr. had his best week yet of college basketball as he was historic in that game against NC State, dropping over 40 points, and also had a great game against Baylor as well. And I agree with Louisville being ranked here at number 21, but if this offense stays hot, they'll threaten to be in the top 15 here soon. I truly believe that. And at number 20 is the Arkansas Razorbacks, who are up at 1 spot to number 20 this week. And Arkansas is now 19-6 and had dominant wins over LSU and Auburn this past week. And the talented freshman duo of Darius Acuff Jr. and Malik Thomas just seem to continue delivering impressive performances time and time again. And Darius Acuff looks like one of the best point guards in the country right now. Billy Richmond also had a big week, so I wanted to make sure and shout out him. But with all the talent on this roster, I'm much higher on Arkansas as I have them at 17 in my rankings, and if they can continue to clean up some of the outside efficiency, they're dangerous in the SEC and could be the really only threat to Florida. Vanderbilt holds steady in this week's AP poll at number 19, and now the Commodores are 21-4 overall and are rebounding with road wins at Auburn and over Texas A&M after some of the recent slips that they had. But their resume includes strong wins like Alabama and Kentucky already in SEC play, and with that record as well, I have them ranked 14th in mine, so I'm a bit off from the AP poll, but I truly believe if they consistently play like they have been, they'll get back to a top 15 caliber caliber squad. St. Louis also stayed put at their ranking in the AP poll at number 18 and at 24-1, and they're riding 18 straight wins and after another dominant league victory this past week. And their offense has been remarkably efficient all year long and has been one of the best, not only in the mid-majors, but in the entire country. And although I'm slightly lower on Josh Schertz's squad at number 20, I definitely think this is one of, if not the best mid-majors outside of Gonzaga currently. And if they continue rolling, they'll be a postseason threat to just about anyone. At number 17 is St. John's once again this week in the AP poll, and the Johnnies are now 20-5 and 13-1 in the Big East and tied with UConn for the top spot, and they're currently on an 11-game winning streak, including an overtime gritty win against Xavier this past week and that hard-fought victory at Providence. And Rick Pitino's roster just keeps finding ways and looks like their talent is finally catching up to those preseason expectations that we had. So I had them around here at number 18 of my rankings, but with where they're at currently, I definitely think they're true contenders, not only in the Big East, but also in March. North Carolina comes in at number 16, and they dropped back 5 spots in this week's AP poll following that loss at Miami this past week. They also had a win over Pittsburgh, though, without Caleb Wilson, who is now down with injury, and that injury really clouds the Tar Heels' near future. But North Carolina is 20-5 overall, so they still have had a decent season so far, but I actually ranked them a bit lower at number 19 just based on the resume and the metrics surrounding it. But their upcoming ACC matchups without Wilson really will test their depth and the ceiling that this team has. Michigan State is another team that fell back in this week's ranking, and they're down 5 spots as well, and now are 20-5 on the year after their rough loss at Wisconsin this past week. And now they've dropped 3 of their last 4 games, which are a little bit of a concern to me. But the earlier wins and the resume that they put together has kept them afloat, but momentum seems to be slipping at times. I have them right around here though at 16th in my rankings, but they must stabilize quickly if they want to compete once again in the Big Ten. Next is Virginia, who climbs up to number 14 in this week's AP poll, and now they're 22-3 on the year and have one of their best seasons in the recent couple of years, and they're winners of 6 straight after their road wins at Florida State and over Ohio State this past week. And they've quietly stacked quality results and are one of the top teams in the ACC, and if this consistency continues like it has been, they'll stay dangerous entering March Madness. Texas Tech was one of the big winners this week as they jumped up 3 spots to number 13 in the AP poll after crushing Colorado and then picking up that stunning win at Arizona behind JT Toppin's heroics. And now they're 19-6 and have one of the better resumes in the country with the collection of wins that they've put together. And I agree with this ranking at number 13 as that's where I have them as well. But with what they've put together so far, if they can pick up a few more wins in the Big 12, they'll definitely jump right back to the top 10. Florida also jumped up a lot in this week's AP poll by 2 spots to number 12, and they're 19-6 as well after beating both Georgia and Kentucky, which are 2 teams that were previously ranked this past week. And the front court definitely leads the charge for this Florida Gators squad, but the backcourt has trended upward, with Xavier Lee having his best week last week and Boogie Flan looking better as well. And I'm higher on this Florida Gators team, especially with the way they've been playing as of recently, so I got them in my top 10 at number 10. But if they keep stacking these type of wins in the SEC, they'll contend for not only that league, but also the NCAA tournament title. Next at number 11 is Gonzaga, who jumped up a spot as well after their dominant defensive work against Washington State and the fact that they reclaimed WCC control with that win on the road against Santa Clara. And now the Zags are 25-2 on the season and still have a solid resume despite that upset loss against Portland that still lingers. And I ranked them around here at number 12, and they're truly league favorites in the WCC, which is no surprise, but their March expectations really hinge on their consistency, and without Braden Huff, I think there are a ton of questions around this team. Illinois dropped a couple of spots in this most recent AP poll down to number 10, and now they're 21-5, but this past week had an overtime loss to Wisconsin, but then bounced back with a win against a good Indiana team. And their earlier 12-game surge really proved their ceiling as one of the better teams in the the country, in my opinion. And I think that loss to Wisconsin said more about the Badgers than it did the Illini. So I'm higher in my ranking with them at number 8. But with their key matchups upcoming in Big Ten play, their head-to-head results will define their seeding. But I definitely still think this is a top 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. Nebraska was another Big Ten team that fell a couple of spots in this week's AP poll, and they're down to number 9 at 22-3 after losing to Purdue, but they also went ahead and beat Northwestern this past week. And that early 20-game run showed that they're a contender, not only in the Big Ten, but I truly believe in March Madness. So I agree with their ranking at number 9, but I believe that Illinois should be ranked ahead of them based on their resume, but also the most recent head-to-head results. But they do have some upcoming Big Ten clashes that will be critical for them to win to stay within the top 10 of the poll. Kansas jumped up to number 8 in this week's AP poll, and now they're 19-6, but was highlighted by handing Arizona its first loss of the season before falling on the road to Iowa State this past week. And they survived without Darren Peterson in that game against the Wildcats, which really has been resilient of the Kansas Jayhawks so far this season, with Melvin Council Jr. and Flory Badunga stepping up big. Although I am lower on this Kansas team at number 11, I do think they're one of the better teams in the country. So if they can sustain this form, and if Darren Peterson can be back and consistently healthy for this team, they'll be right back in that contender status for me. Purdue skyrocketed up 6 spots in this week's AP poll to number 7 after their strong road wins at Nebraska and Iowa, which extended their 4-game winning streak that they're on. And their earlier struggles that we saw, including a 3-game losing streak, are starting to feel distant. And I agree that this is right around where they should be ranked. But with that renewed confidence, they're re-entering the Big Ten title picture. But that game against Michigan will be huge to see just what they can do against the very top teams in the country. Iowa State stayed put at the number 6 spot this past week in the AP poll, and now they're 23-3 after a loss to TCU this past week, but then they had that dominant win over Kansas, which really showed me something. And they're entering February's toughest stretch right now, but they're battle tested with everything that they've done. And with the win that they just picked up over Houston at home, I think they're going to be jumping even more in next week's AP poll once it comes out. And jumping into our top 5 at number 5, we have UConn, who is 24-2 on the year and is up to 5th after their wins over Butler and Georgetown this past week. And there are some debates that are being had right now with whether they should be above or below Arizona. But right now, with what they've done and that they lost to Arizona, I had them behind them as well. So I agree with this number 5 ranking. But if they can tighten up performances, because we have been seeing them have closer results than they should have, they'll stay in contention for a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Arizona is the team that a lot of people are wondering where they dropped to, and they dropped back to number 4 after those back-to-back losses, which were the first of their year against Kansas and Texas Tech. And context matters here for the Wildcats, as they're still elite, and as I mentioned, they beat UConn earlier, which is why I had them ahead of the Huskies, and I believe is why the AP voters had them here as well. So I agree with this ranking at 4. But a rebound in upcoming Big 12 tests will be big for them, as they can not only steady their standings in league play, but also try and stay as a 1 seed for the NCAA tournament. Duke climbed up another spot to number 3 in this week's AP poll after handling Pitt, Clemson, and Syracuse this past week, and they rank as the number 2 team in KenPom, which is actually why I had them as my second ranked team in the entire country, along with the resume that they put together, because they have a ton of great wins so far on the resume right now. But they're universally top 3 in the country, and they have a blockbuster showdown with Michigan this weekend, which will likely determine next week's number 1. Houston jumped up a spot to number 2 in this week's AP poll after beating Utah and Kansas State in dominant fashion, and they're once again anchored by that elite defense, but the offense is no joke as well. Although I am a bit lower on Houston, I had them number 4 in my rankings, but they did come up with a road loss at Iowa State on Monday night and have a matchup that's looming with Arizona, which could significantly shift where they are in next week's rankings for the AP poll. But as I mentioned in the intro, we now have a new number 1 team in the country, and that's the Michigan Wolverines, who claimed the number 1 spot after Arizona's losses this past week. and at 24-1, they were nearly the unanimous number 1 team in the country and picked up dominant wins over Northwestern and UCLA this past week. And their only loss came to Wisconsin, who is now ranked and seems to be surging, which that loss doesn't look as bad as it once did. So I agree with them being the number 1 team in the country, as they have been not only the most dominant team, but have the best resume, I truly believe. And as I mentioned, like with Duke, they have a massive showdown with the Blue Devils this weekend, which will likely decide if they can stay at the top of the rankings or if they'll only be here for 1 week. But that wraps it up for today's video. Let me know your thoughts on this week's AP Top 25 rankings in the comments down below. Also, if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.